The oil lamp trembled on the iron hook, as if the flame itself knew the fate of that night. The air carried the smell of wet earth, old sweat, and the boiled sugar of the mill that, even from a distance, seemed to watch everything with its grinding iron teeth. The slave quarters were awake, though no one dared open their mouth. When heavy footsteps approached, even the silence trembled. Miriam knelt on the ground, the hem of her skirt still damp from the river, her hands pressed into the cold, packed clay. The overseer gripped her arm, the squeeze so harsh her skin seemed to scream without sound. She didn't fight, not because she accepted it, but because she knew the price. Inside the secret pocket sewn into the lining of her dress, hidden like a second skin, was the one thing she could not lose. A letter folded in four, carrying words powerful enough to burn the house ground to ashes. No one there knew who she truly was. No one, not even the colonel. The night had begun differently. The mistress was furious since supper, her bracelets clinking like blades. She walked through the house with eyes sharp from jealousy, searching for proof of what her heart already suspected. The colonel pretended indifference, and that indifference was the poison that would spill before dawn. Later, when the rain began to fall heavy and loud, the overseer Joachim appeared at the door of the slave quarters calling Miriam by name. He didn't call anyone else. He gave no explanation. He simply said, "The colonel wants you." Her heart sank. So did the heart of everyone in the Senzala. Miriam knew why. They all knew, but no one could stop it. She was dragged through the mud up to the porch of the house ground. The wooden boards groaned beneath the weight of a command repeated for generations. The door opened. A gust of cold air slipped out, carrying the thick smell of tobacco and cachaça. The colonel was inside, leaning on the table, shirt open, face flushed with anger, or with something Miriam preferred not to name. She remembered Rose's warning, the cook who had raised her more than anyone else. If he ever calls you alone, run. But if you cannot, hide what you carry. The letter is worth more than your pain. And Miriam hid it. The letter stayed against her skin like a heartbeat. What happened in that room needs no description. The only thing that matters is this. She walked out, but she could no longer feel her legs. And standing in the doorway, watching, her gaze was a blade that cut through spirit, not flesh. What the house ground didn't know was that the letter, that single folded sheet, held a truth unimaginable to anyone there. A truth that explained why the mistress hated her so deeply, why the colonel avoided her in public, why since childhood Miriam received strange favors, and why the overseer watched her more than the others. The letter had been delivered in secret by a traveler from the backlands 3 months earlier, a man who came searching for someone he'd never had the courage to seek before. He handed Miriam the envelope and whispered, "Keep this. It is of your blood, and their blood too." When she opened it, her world collapsed. It said, "My daughter, you never belonged to the slave quarters. You were born from a night that should never have happened. The colonel is your father, and the mistress knows." Miriam fell to the ground. Her body, trained to carry sacks of sugar, could not carry the weight of a sentence made of ink. If that letter reached the right, or wrong, hands, the entire estate would fall. The colonel's lineage would be stained, the mistress's honor destroyed, the legitimate heirs stripped of their inheritance, and Miriam would cease to be property, because no one can own their own blood. That is why she needed to stay alive, and that is why, when the colonel summoned her that night, she realized he might already know. Or maybe the mistress had sensed the whispers, the movements, the rising suspicion. A letter like that could not exist. When everything was over, Miriam was shoved back onto the porch. The rain had turned into a downpour, as if the sky itself tried to cleanse the earth. The mistress stood there, her face twisted into a flawless mask. "What are you hiding, you wretch?" she hissed. Miriam said nothing. The letter burned against her chest. The overseer searched her, turned her pockets, ran his hands along every seam. Nothing. Because Miriam, desperate, shaking, terrified, had done the unthinkable. She tore open the lining of her dress and swallowed the entire letter. Folded, wet, bitter, sharp. It was that or death. By morning, the whole plantation knew something terrible had happened. The colonel didn't come to breakfast. The mistress locked herself in her room. The children on the porch didn't chase the chickens. The enslaved workers beat the sugar at the mill with the wrong rhythm, the rhythm that only appears when danger stalks the land. And then came the scream of the colonel himself, a scream no one expected from a man carved from arrogance and iron. How did she get this letter? Silence. Who sent it? Who knew? Who hid it? The servants trembled. The mistress sobbed behind her door. The overseer sweated like a man at the edge of fever. The colonel held a wet, crumpled scrap of paper, coughed up by Miriam when her body could no longer hold it. Even smudged, even torn, even soaked, her handwriting was there. Her name was there. The truth was there. Miriam was his blood. Blood he tried to bury in the dark of the senzala. Blood the mistress tried to erase out of jealousy. Blood now screaming from the page like a living thing. The colonel's fury was not shame, it was fear. Because if that truth spread, it meant the end of his honor, of his authority, of his legacy, of his name. And Miriam, the woman he had humiliated just hours before, now stared back at him with something he had never seen in her: courage. Why did she have this? He muttered, pacing like a trapped beast. The answer dropped like a stone. Because her mother wanted her to know who she was before you destroyed her. It was Rosa speaking, a woman who knew too much and who was tired of silence. From that moment, chaos devoured the plantation. The mistress broke under jealousy. The colonel lost control. The legitimate heirs panicked. The overseer tried to silence Miriam and failed. The enslaved workers split between fear and hope, all because of a letter. One letter. The letter Miriam kept pressed to her heart. The letter she swallowed to protect her identity. The letter that burned through the colonel like fire. And the letter that proved that even in the darkness of the slave quarters, truth survives, hidden in seams, in pockets, in pulses, and in the heart. And they say that on stormy nights, when the air smells of burnt sugar and wet earth, if you stand near the ruins of that old plantation, you can still hear it, the scream of the colonel realizing that his greatest shame had a name, a voice, and the courage to outlive him.